There is a stillness in you that feels the world's noise in a different way. A part of you that registers not just the facts you see on the news, but the frequency vibrating behind them. It's a subtle weight in the air, a static in your perception that most people around you don't seem to notice. You feel it in your shoulders, a nameless melancholy, the sense that something ancient and profound is moving beneath the surface of reality. You try to name this feeling, perhaps as anxiety or worry about the future, but your soul knows it's something more. It is the pain of the world itself, and you, for some reason, have become an antenna for it. And this sensitivity, which you have so often judged as a weakness, is, in fact, your first point of access to the truth. The escalation of violence the world witnessed, the one they christened with the coded and terrible name of Operation Red Wedding, was not just another chapter in the long, sad history of human wars. It was a feverish symptom. It was the planet physically manifesting a spiritual infection that has long been consuming it. Every image, every news report, every political statement functioned as a magnifying mirror, revealing in real time the fractures that exist within the collective heart of humanity. The great and immutable law of polarity, which teaches that everything has its opposite, was exposed there, not as a philosophical concept, but as an active, violent, and undeniable force, so that no one could look away and pretend not to see it in action within themselves. The missiles that crossed the skies of the Middle East carried more than explosives. They carried meaning. They were the physical, materialized projection of the missiles of judgment, fear, and hatred that we silently fire in our own minds every day. The great mystic Manly P. Hall understood this when he wrote that all war is at its root an occult ritual that has lost its consciousness. Think about that. A ritual is an act with intention, a sacred act that has lost its soul and become a mechanical and profane repetition. Beneath the noise of mass violence, beneath the rhetoric of us versus them, there are initiatory tests, silent invitations for humanity to reclaim the consciousness of the ritual and remember its original purpose, the integration of the shadows, not their annihilation. And perhaps you feel small, an insignificant voice in the face of such an overwhelming global storm. But this is where your perception must shift. The universe does not operate in a linear fashion, but a fractal one. There is a sacred and direct connection between your most intimate choices and the energy field of the conflict. A thought of compassion that you hold in your heart, a word of hatred that you refuse to share, an act of deep listening to someone who thinks differently from you. These are not isolated and powerless acts. They are ripples. They are causes that generate effects in the invisible fabric of reality. They can subtly feed the field of chaos, or they can silently begin to weave the field of coherence and peace. Your inner world is not a refuge from the outer world. It is the control room. Therefore, the question that has brought you here, to this exact moment of synchronicity, is not about geopolitics. It is not about who started it or who is right. The question your soul is imploring you to ask is much deeper and far more courageous. Could it be that deciphering the forbidden spiritual code hidden behind this war and all wars is the very act that finally transmutes not only your personal destiny, your pain, and your confusion, but the very destiny of the planet? What if the key to world peace is not in a treaty, but in your own awakened perception? This is the journey we begin now. To understand the wound of now, To truly feel its shape and its depth, we must have the courage to journey back to the place where the scar was formed. The conflict you are watching today is not a product of our time. It is the eruption of a living wound, an infection that has been festering beneath the skin of history for millennia. Under the sands of those lands, there are ancestral traumas that were never healed, memories of empires and exiles that still pulse with a very real pain. The pains of ancient Persia and the pains of the Hebrew tribes are not stories in a book. They are energetic entities, ghosts that haunt the machinery of modern geopolitics. Your nervous system, which is far older and wiser than your conscious mind, recognizes these signatures of pain. That is why you cannot look away. It is not a morbid fascination. It is your cellular memory, your human heritage, recognizing an echo of a suffering that somehow is also your own. This ancestral recognition is the gateway to what happens inside of you in real time as you watch the spectacle of war. It is a hijacking of your perception, a neural hijacking. There is an ancient animal that lives in the center of your brain, your amygdala, whose sole job is to detect threats and ensure your survival. At the same time, there are invisible threads of empathy that connect you to all of humanity, your mirror neurons. When your amygdala is activated by the constant fear that is broadcast by the media, and your mirror neurons force you to feel the pain and anger emanating from the conflict, a vicious cycle is created. And this cycle has a perverse effect. It makes hostility feel like a safe harbor. The brutal clarity of an us versus them, of a well-defined enemy, offers a false sense of certainty that your psyche, so exhausted from the complexity and uncertainty of the modern world, secretly craves. It's like an addiction. The war out there offers a simplicity that peace in here seems to lack. And in that longing for clarity, you become trapped, repeating a cycle of fear and reaction that does not belong to you, but that you feel compelled to perpetuate. To break this hypnotic spell, one must not look outward with more intensity, but inward with more honesty. There is an inner ritual, an act of a profound soul diplomacy that has been forgotten. It is the act of naming one's own shadows without judgment. It is the courage to create a parliament within yourself and to give a seat to each of the parties. In a moment of silence, imagine yourself taking a deep breath, and as you exhale, acknowledging the existence of your inner Israel. That part of you that feels besieged, that is afraid of being annihilated, that builds walls to protect itself, and that clings fiercely to ancient promises and its own history of suffering. Just observe it. Give it the right to exist. Then take another deep breath, and as you exhale, acknowledge your inner Iran, that part of you that carries the pride of an ancient lineage, that feels deeply misunderstood by the world, that resists any external label, and that dreams of restoring a lost glory. Just observe it. By doing this, by allowing these two poles to exist within you, without needing to fight to the death, you stop projecting them outward. You begin to heal the world war within your own heart. This wisdom is not a modern invention. It is a whisper that echoes through history. It is told in mystical circles, the story of a 12th century Persian Jewish master, a man who saw beyond the veils. Upon realizing that two factions in his city were about to erupt into a bloodbath over a land dispute, he did not try to argue with the generals. He did not appeal to logic or to law. He walked slowly to the tense and silent space between the two armies, where the air vibrated with fear and the smell of steel. And there he began to recite a poem. A poem that did not speak of right and wrong, of borders or grievances. It spoke of the longing the soul feels for its source. It spoke of the sun, which shines equally on all men. It spoke of the earth, which welcomes all seeds without distinction. And as his voice resonated, the frequency in the field changed. The bloodlust was replaced by a melancholy, a remembrance of a lost unity. That day, he interrupted the ritual of war with the ritual of beauty and vibration. He knew that everything in the universe is vibration. Operation Red Wedding, with its show of force, was not just a military action, it was a frequency broadcast. Hundreds of jets emitting a shockwave of fear and domination across the planet. And here lies our deepest misunderstanding of the law of vibration. We have been taught to confuse power with force, resonance with volume. True resonance, true creation, is born of coherence, not brute force. It's like tuning a guitar. You don't force the string to the right note. You apply the exact tension with sensitivity until it resonates in harmony. Trying to force an outcome, whether with armies or with willpower, only fractures the energetic field, creating more dissonance and more chaos. This leads us to a sacred paradox, the zero-point paradox. In the midst of the deafening noise of propaganda, of opinions, of sirens and explosions, the only frequency band that remains perfectly untouched, sovereign, and infinitely powerful is silence. Silence is not the absence of sound. Silence is the presence of all potential. It is the blank canvas on which all sounds are painted. It is the sanctuary to which your consciousness can retreat to recalibrate. And within this silence, another frequency can be perceived. A subtle hum, the sound of being itself. The ancient rishis of India identified this sound as having a frequency of 108 Hz, the sound that calms the vagus nerve and aligns the subtle bodies. It is not a sound to be produced, but a sound to be rediscovered. It is the native frequency of your soul. And these two nations, these two poles of the conflict, are the physical manifestation of two ancestral sound archetypes. On one side you have the shofar, the ram's horn. Its sound is a tear in the fabric of reality, a primitive, earthy call that awakens, that warns, that cries out for a divine judgment. It is the voice of the land and the tribe. On the other side, you have the ney, the reed flute. Its sound is pure melancholy, a lament of longing, the sound of the very breath of life passing through an empty reed. It is the voice of the soul that feels exiled from its divine source and yearns to return. They are the two voices of the same soul, one crying out for justice on earth, and the other weeping with longing for heaven, both trapped in a dialogue of the deaf, in a desperate search for a harmony they have both forgotten how to play. And here, in the modern world, in this age of technology and instant information, these ancient dissonances do not just echo, they are weaponized, they are amplified, focused, and used as a tool to keep your perception in a state of confusion and paralysis. Your third eye, your Ajna chakra, is not a fantasy from a bygone era. It is a faculty of your consciousness, a biological stargate designed to perceive the subtle layers of reality that exist beyond the visible spectrum. It is your organ of intuition, but this portal is being systematically sabotaged. The daily torrent of media you consume, with its frantic pace and emotional charge, is not just information. It functions as a powerful magnet of decoherence. Its chaotic frequency actively scrambles your theta brain rhythms, the very brainwave you need to access states of creativity, deep intuition, and clear vision. You feel this as a mental fog, an inability to connect with your own silent knowing, a frustration at no longer being able to hear your own inner voice amidst so much noise. This process of sabotage has an internal accomplice, a part of your own brain. In neurological terms, the overload of information and fear chronically activates your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. Think of it as an anxious guardian, an overactive manager within your mind, whose job is to analyze, categorize threats, and plan escape routes. In a balanced world, it is essential. But in our world, it is in a constant state of high alert. And in its well-intentioned attempt to protect you, it ends up building a prison. It suffocates your visionary imagination, as imagination is seen as a risk, a deviation from the focus on survival. It silences your ability to dream of other realities, of other solutions, because its only priority is to manage the crisis of now. You were not born disconnected and cynical. You were taught day after day to overvalue the anxious manager and to distrust the wise dreamer who also lives within you. And the most subtle and effective tool to maintain this state of imbalance is what can be called a spiritual whip. It is the belief, which has been subtly installed in us, that we have a moral duty to keep ourselves constantly informed, to witness every new horror, to absorb every detail of the tragedy. We confuse this self-flagellation with responsible citizenship. Every time you force yourself to watch one more video of suffering, to read one more article that leaves you hopeless, you believe you are doing your part. But in reality, you are using a whip on your own soul, draining your life force, depleting your capacity for genuine compassion, and most importantly, annihilating your energy to be a true force for change. Informed paralysis is not power. It is the most sophisticated of cages. This constant vigil has real and devastating chemical consequences in your body. It is a chemistry of despair. The breaking news alerts, the images of conflict, they generate spikes of cortisol, the stress hormone, that flood your system. Your adrenal glands, responsible for managing this response, work in overdrive, day and night, until they reach a point of exhaustion. And what remains is a chronic fatigue, a low-grade state of freeze. It's that feeling of being energetically stuck, of wanting to do something, but having no strength, of the body feeling heavy, as if moving through water. It is your physical body responding to the perception that the threat is constant and there is nowhere to run. It is the response of a cornered animal. And to ensure you remain in this cycle, there is the dopamine casino you carry in your hand, your phone. The act of endlessly scrolling the screen, doom scrolling, is not a sign of a lack of willpower. It is the result of a brilliantly designed hijacking of your reward system. Each scroll of the screen is like pulling the lever of a slot machine. You don't know what will come next. An image that will make you angry. A news story that will confirm your worst fears. A comment that will give you a spike of indignation. Each of these small emotional discharges releases a small dose of dopamine, which makes you want to pull the lever again and again, in the hope of finding a piece of information that will finally resolve the tension, which never happens. You remain trapped, giving away your most precious energy in exchange for small shocks of stimulation that only leave you more exhausted and empty. You feel this pain for a reason, and the reason is not that you are weak. It is because you are under an energetic, psychological, and chemical attack. But And this is the most important part. Within this very experience of suffering, within this very mechanism of control, lies the promise of alchemy. The ancient alchemists did not seek to turn lead into gold out of greed. It was a metaphor for the soul's process. The lead of Saturn is this exact feeling. The weight, the restriction, the melancholy, the sense of being trapped in dense, dark matter. And the sacred work is not to run from this lead, but to learn to light an inner fire of consciousness so intense that it is able to transmute this same heavy matter into the radiant solar gold of clarity, sovereignty, and true freedom. Your pain is not your sentence. It is your raw material. But what if all this pain, all this exhaustion, all this sensitivity that the world told you was a problem to be fixed, is none of that? What if it is not a flaw in your system, but rather an advanced function of it, operating exactly as it should in a world that is profoundly sick? Take a deep breath for a moment and just consider this possibility. Your pain is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that you are beginning to wake up. You were not broken. You were, all along, remembering. And what you are remembering is how to read a map that most have forgotten exists. A forbidden map, not because it is dangerous, but because it returns power to the one who reads it. There is a fabric of living memory that permeates the entire universe, a field of information that the ancient mystics called the Akashic records. Think of it as the cellular memory of the planet, the quantum foam, where every thought, every feeling, and every event leaves an indelible impression. Great joys leave traces of light, and great traumas like wars leave deep energetic scars, open wounds on the etheric body of the world. Your sensitivity, which makes you feel the weight of the world so acutely, is your ability to touch these scars. You are not imagining things. You are feeling the real pain of the planet, a pain that most have learned to numb. Your soul has not yet forgotten the fundamental truth. You and this planet are one body, and what harms the web harms the spider. It is here that the spiritual path is most profoundly misunderstood in our culture. Many believe that spirituality is a way to escape the world's pain, to rise above the chaos in a bubble of positivity. But that is not wisdom. It is denial. The true journey, the journey you are being invited to walk, is that of forensic spirituality. It is the courage to be a detective of the soul. It is the willingness to put on your gloves of compassion and examine the energetic crime scene, both within you and in the collective. It is to follow the traces of pain, not with judgment, not to find culprits, but with a sacred curiosity to understand its origin, to witness what has not been witnessed, to bring light to what has been left in darkness. And in this investigative work, you discover the most liberating law of all. Your deepest trigger, your most persistent pain, that situation you most avoid, is not an obstacle on your path. It is the path. It is the exact coordinate on your treasure map. The place that hurts the most is the place that points with laser-like precision to the original wound that, once healed, will release the greatest amount of power and light in your life. The universe does not punish you with suffering. It guides you through it. The data you have been avoiding with so much effort is not a threat. It is the exact address of your liberation. The fear you feel is just the guardian at the gate, testing if you are truly ready to claim what is on the other side. This is not just a beautiful theory. It is a technology of healing, whispered down through lineages of healers throughout history. There are the stories, almost erased from the books, of a healer who worked with the children and grandchildren of concentration camp survivors after the Second World War. These generations carried a shadow, an inexplicable sadness, a post-traumatic stress that did not come from their own experiences, but which had been inherited in their DNA and their energy field. The healer did not make them talk about it. He guided them into a deep trance state, on a safe journey within themselves, so that they could find and witness the echo of their grandparents' pain. They did not need to relive the horror. They only needed to offer their loving presence to that trapped memory. And by doing so, by bringing the light of consciousness to the darkness of unprocessed pain, they freed not only themselves, but also the souls of their ancestors. They did not flee from the darkness. They walked through it with the eyes of the soul wide open. This knowledge does not demand blind faith. It invites direct experience. It points to subtle rituals, technologies of the soul that, when practiced with intention, begin to reconfigure your inner world, and consequently, your outer world. There is an immense healing power in an act that our modern culture fears most: the voluntary retreat into silence and darkness. Within the practice known as the 7-minute dark reset lies a biological and spiritual wisdom. It is not an emptiness to be feared, but a fertile womb where consciousness can be reborn. By retreating into absolute darkness, without the blue light of screens, without the incessant stimulation of the world, for just a few minutes, you give a gift to your pineal gland. You allow it to cease the production of daytime hormones and begin the production of melatonin, which in turn opens the door for endogenous microdoses of DMT, the spirit molecule, to be released. It is an act of neurological recalibration. It is a return to the temple of your own being, where, in the absence of external noise, your inner voice can finally be heard. From this stillness, your own breath reveals itself as the most portable and powerful alchemical tool you possess. There is an ancient rhythm, a cadence that balances the opposing currents within your nervous system, known as the fire-water breath. It is a conscious act of modulating your own energy. The inhale, the fire, which brings energy, activation, prana. The exhale, the water, which is longer, smoother, and represents release, surrender, relaxation. By establishing a rhythm where the exhale is consciously longer than the inhale, you are sending a direct and unmistakable message to your nervous system. You are safe. You are moving your physiology out of the state of fight or flight and into the state of rest and repair. It is not about controlling the breath. It is about dancing with it. It is the living proof that you can, at any moment, use the breath of life to transform the chemistry of fear into the biochemistry of peace. And when the body and mind calm down, your hearing expands. You begin to perceive the more subtle frequencies of existence. You can begin to attune to the 108 Hz pineal hum. This is not necessarily a sound you need to produce with your voice, but rather a frequency you can begin to feel and hear in the silence. It is the background vibration of the universe, the primordial sound of Om, the frequency of tranquility. It is the bass tone to which all of nature is attuned. By focusing your attention on this internal resonance, you are, in practice, tuning your own instrument. You are aligning your cells, your heart, and your energy field with the inherent harmony of the cosmos. It is a vibrational massage for your being, which calms the nervous system and anchors your consciousness in a state of profound stability, no matter how chaotic the outer world may seem. With this stability as your anchor, you then gain the strength and clarity for the deepest healing work, the act of the compassionate witness. This is the essence of both the Echo Trace protocol and the ritual of naming the shadow. They are two applications of the same sacred technology. It is your ability to look at the pains of your ancestral lineage, or the conflicts that exist within you, your inner Israel and your inner Iran, without the need to fix, to judge, to take a side, or to run away. It is simply to be present for what is. It is to offer the pain, whether it is yours or inherited, the gift it most longs for, to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be held in the light of your neutral and loving consciousness. And the paradox is that the moment you stop fighting the shadow, the moment you welcome it with your presence, the energy that was trapped within it dissolves. It no longer needs to scream to be heard. This is the work that the ancient masters called the great work, the true alchemy, which is not concerned with metals, but with the transformation of the dense matter of human suffering into the luminous gold of awakened consciousness. And as you commit to this inner work, as you practice the art of the compassionate witness, something miraculous begins to happen. The veils of separation begin to thin. Reality becomes more porous, more transparent. And in the silence of your being, a final sacred truth is revealed. The world, from the moment you were born, has taught you that life is a battle, that polarity is about choosing a side, good versus evil, light versus darkness, right versus wrong, your team against their team. This is the great lie, the false binarism that serves as fuel for all wars, from the battles we see on the news to the silent wars we wage within our own families and our own hearts. The ancient Hermetic sages left us a reminder. Polarity was never about two opposing and irreconcilable things. It is about the two ends of the same stick. Light and darkness are not enemies. They are different gradations of the same light. Heat and cold are different gradations of the same temperature. They are an energy to be managed, a spectrum to be understood, not a war to be won. The tension of this global conflict, which currently vibrates at a low and destructive note, can be seen in another way. It can be seen as the string of a cosmic instrument stretched to its limit. Our instinctive reaction is to want to cut the string, to stop the ugly sound it is making. But higher wisdom invites us to do something different. It invites us to apply a new quality of attention, a new sensitivity to this same taut string. And by doing so, by sustaining the tension with an elevated consciousness, it can begin to vibrate at a different octave, producing higher harmonics, a music of complexity and beauty that seemed impossible from the original dissonant note. The solution to the conflict is not to eliminate the tension, but to elevate it to a higher frequency. And the key to doing this lies in how you see your opponent. The image of the enemy, that caricature that is projected with such conviction on your screens and in your mind, is a mirror. That which you most despise, most judge, and most fear in the other is almost always a part of your own soul that you have denied, repressed, and exiled to the shadows of your being. The external enemy is a hologram of your own unclaimed power. The cruelty you see may be a reflection of your own strength that you are afraid to use. The ignorance you point out may be a reflection of your own intuition that you refuse to listen to. The enemy, therefore, is not your adversary. He is your hidden master, a sacred messenger who comes to show you exactly where your soul yearns to become more whole. This is not just an idealistic philosophy. It is a path that has already been walked. Secret history, the kind not told in textbooks. Whispers of a pact of coherence that took place behind the scenes of the famous peace accord between Egypt and Israel in 1979. It is said that before the politicians and diplomats sat down at the table to negotiate the terms of the treaty, a secret meeting was organized between a group of Sufi mystics from Egypt and Kabbalists from Israel. They did not meet to debate politics. They met to meditate together, to pray together, to work on the energetic plane. They met to consciously tune the string, to seed the quantum field with a frequency of harmony and possibility, creating the energetic conditions so that peace could then flourish on the material plane. They did not negotiate peace. They embodied it first. You know this feeling. You have felt it before in fleeting moments of profound clarity, perhaps in a dream or while looking at the night sky, or in the silence that follows a storm. That pull in your chest, that whisper that tells you there is so much more to reality than what your eyes can see. That feeling that you are part of something vast, ancient, and intelligent. For a long time, you may have dismissed it as your imagination, as a childish fantasy or a desire to escape from harsh reality. But now, in this silence, listen with your heart. It was not your imagination. It was not an escapist fantasy. It was a memory of your true nature, of your connection to the all, and of the power you carry to perceive and weave reality from the sanctuary of your own awakened being. And so, as you ground yourself in this memory of who you are, your perception of the world begins to undergo an alchemical transformation. The images of war, which once seemed so solid, so overwhelmingly real, begin to lose their density. They become translucent, like a hologram whose projector is losing power. You begin to see the conflict not as an inevitable reality, but as a hypnotic spell cast upon the collective consciousness. And you realize that the final application of the hermetic law of mentalism is this: to break a spell, you do not fight the illusion. You anchor your consciousness so firmly in the truth that the illusion no longer has anything to hold on to. The clarity that emanates from a single awakened third eye is a solvent for the lie of separation. Your inner practices, those that the world would judge as small and insignificant, then reveal themselves as acts of a silent revolution. Your media fast is not an escape. It is an act of perceptual sovereignty. Your dark resets are not an isolation. They are a cosmic recalibration. Your inner hum is not just any sound. It is your attunement to the frequency of peace. Each time you choose coherence over chaos, you are literally repositioning your personal timeline, and in doing so, you send a ripple of possibility throughout the entire macro field. Do not underestimate the power of a single human being living in a state of inner peace. You become a beacon, a point of stability for all those around you. Think of your third eye, your awakened consciousness, as the first light of dawn. The dawn does not fight the night. It does not hate the darkness or judge it for having existed. It does not push it out of the way. It simply emerges at its divinely appointed time, and its light, which begins soft and subtle, grows in power and presence in an inevitable way. The fog of war, with all its fears, confusions, and lies, is like the fog in a valley. It cannot resist the presence of the light. It is not defeated. It simply dissolves. It disappears in the clarity and warmth of the rising sun. Your work is not to fight the fog. Your work is to be the dawn. And this is the final invitation. You are not being called to join another battle, to take up arms, or to shout slogans that only feed the cycle of polarity. Your mission, should you choose it, is much more subtle and infinitely more powerful. You are invited to become a living antidote, a node of coherence in the planet's energetic grid. Someone who emanates a frequency of peace and understanding so authentic and stable that the swords around you, metaphorically, begin to forget their purpose to harm. You become the living proof that another world is possible, because you are already living in it, from the inside out. You are the key. You always were. If this journey has resonated in your spirit, leave a silent acknowledgement in the comments, a confirmation not for the world, but for your own soul. To continue on this journey of remembrance and awakening, we invite you to subscribe to the channel and to like this video. And remember, it is not about what you want, but rather who you are.